shift the paradigm of thinking and come up with innovative solutions to solve problems here on Earth. Today's theme is exploring space without abandoning Earth. EarthSpace is about shifting perspectives. So we invite everyone who's here with us live and everyone who's going to be watching this recording later to really open your mind and explore how space innovation can nurture the Earth's environment and foster a profound connection between the original mother, our Mother Earth, Gaia, and the cosmos. Through the lens of the classical elements and the transformative power of the overview effect, this event envisions a future where space and Earth are interdependent realms working in harmony for the sustainability of life. Today, our guests include Frank White, father of the overview effect, Rick Tumlinson, the founder of EarthLight, Ryan Olliges, CEO, Morgan Goodwin, executive director, and my co-host, Robert Katz, who is going to help lead the discussion today. I'm now going to pass it over to Rick. Thank you for joining us, and good morning again.
Hey, thank you, Sarah, and thank all of you for showing up or viewing this if you catch it later. One of the founding principles of EarthLight is to protect and expand the domain of life. In fact, let me give you all three of them, and I'll come back to that. The first principle is to protect and expand the domain of life. The second is to honor and evolve human civilization. And the third is to explore and experience everything in the universe. I think of that as the fun one. But let's go back to that first one, and that's what's relevant today. Our job is to take care of this place, this MotherWorld, this place that has given us as humanity birth, as well as all of the other species, all of our fellow travelers on what is arguably also a spaceship. That is what we are about. We believe very, very strongly that we are not going into space to abandon the Mother World, but to carry her seeds outward. And as an old friend who used to be my boss when I worked for my mentor, Gerard K. O'Neill, used to tell me, you can't necessarily take care of the neighborhood if your own house is on fire. You have to take care of your home first. And that's what it's all about. We're not running away from anything. We are including who we are, the responsibility we have, and moving outward together. EarthLight was founded around 2012. About 10 years ago, we started our New Worlds Conference and our Space Cowboy Ball. And in the last year or so, we've decided to finally start getting out into the conversation more and more. You'll be hearing more and more from us in the months to come. But today, we are just so excited to have this great team, including Sarah and Robert to work with us. In the background, I do want to recognize that Junaid Min and Leah Doolittle are working the tech for us in the background. I want to make sure to give them a shout out. But with all of that said now, I want to go ahead and hand it to Robert.
Great. Welcome. Thank you so much, Rick. It's such an honor to be here with you, with my amazing co-host, Sarah. And she's being very generous. An honor to be here with her and other luminaries that you'll be hearing from very, very shortly. So it's all very, very exciting. But most importantly, we're so honored to have all of you here join us on this journey. As Rick said, there's three important domains that we need to focus on. And this is a great day to do it, but really every day is a great day. So obviously Earth, where we must develop sustainable industrial practices. And you're going to hear amazing work that is being done in that area, amazing innovation in that area. You're going to hear about Earth's orbit, where we must act urgently to end this proliferation of orbital pollution. And then the third is the beyond, where we must carry forward lessons that we have here on Earth to very much respect the unknown, which we're about to explore. So with that, I'm going to back over to Sarah, and we'll start to begin to explore and delve into those with our guests.
Thank you so much, Robert. So today we're going to have several speakers, and our guests include Frank White, who's author of the groundbreaking book, The Overview Effect. And this is a theory that has really recognized the profound impact that spaceflight has on astronauts and those that get to experience Earth from space and how their worldview of the home planet shifts. We also have Ryan, the CEO of Elevated Materials, a company that's recycling byproducts from space manufacturing happening on Earth to help reduce waste and pollution. And we also have Morgan, who is the executive director of the Planetary Sunshade Foundation. This is an organization that's dedicated to bold solutions for global warming using space-based infrastructure. So we're going to start off the conversation with Mr. Frank White, one of our favorite humans in the space industry, who has really helped all of us gain a new profound understanding of our experience of awe and our experience of how we can become a community and really have interconnectedness in all the things that we do. Frank White is a space philosopher and author best known for the Overview Effect, as I mentioned, which is about space exploration and human evolution. When we go over to space and we profoundly change our experience of life and life on Earth, this is what helps us to innovate and move things forward in bold and visionary ways. Frank is a Harvard-educated thinker and has dedicated his career to examining the social, ethical, and philosophical implications of space exploration. Now, Frank was with us for the inaugural EarthSpace event last year, and today the high points of what he's covering will include the overview effect and how that reveals that there is no distinction between Earth and space, as well as share some words from an astronaut we both admire and adore. Frank, thank you for being here with us today. Your work really reveals how astronauts viewing Earth from space often undergo this powerful shift in perspective, and they start to see Earth as this fragile yet beautiful and interconnected planet that is worth protecting. And all of the silly little arguments and reasons that we have fall to the wayside. How do you think that that same transformation can be instilled here on Earth for those who don't have the chance yet to go up to space?
Well, Sarah, thank you very much for that very nice introduction. And I would say that we have a big educational process before us. EarthSpace 2025 is not just an interesting tagline. It's really another way of thinking. And as Rick has said, and as other speakers have already said, it's a breakthrough in thinking. And it really is a way of thinking that does not divide Earth from space. And it's so common for us that we do it all the time. And even when I go to a meeting and I say, listen, we're not going to talk about going into space. We are in space. We'll always be in space. There's nowhere else to be but space. And you said it today, Sarah. And yet later, some other speaker will talk about going into space. Now, why is this? And what does it have to do with the overview effect? Well, as you mentioned, the overview effect is an experience, and I focus on that. It's an experience astronauts have when they see Earth from space and in space. From space, you're in outer space and you look back at the planet, but in space is very much like the image behind me, where you see the Earth against the backdrop of the universe. And many astronauts are talking more and more about the blackness of the infinity that they view. And the reason I say we have an educational process is that we don't experience that on the surface. We don't experience being in a spaceship. We don't experience moving through the universe at a high rate of speed. That's not our experience, and that's the most fundamental thing about the overview effect, is that it's an experience. And the challenge educationally is for more people to have that experience, either through commercial spaceflight, virtual reality, webinars like this one. And so this is a very important reality for us to grasp. And the challenge is, how do we bring the overview effect down to Earth, as we say, so that more and more people have the shift sociologically that the astronauts have psychologically. You mentioned Sarah Sabri, who flew as the first Egyptian citizen to become an astronaut, really, as a citizen astronaut of Space for Humanity. And I interviewed her prior to her flight and after her flight for the next edition of my book. I can't say it any better than she can. So we do have a clip of Sarah Sabri talking about that experience of the unity of Earth and space. So I think we can play that now. Is there any way to summarize briefly what you think changed?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for me was the lack of separation between Earth and space. And because we've always used the terms space and Earth kind of separate from each other. And we always thought, okay, we're doing things on Earth here, and then like there are certain things that are going to be done for space. But for me, when I was up there, I realized that there's no actual separation between the two. The Earth is just a continuation of it, and we're just a part of this much bigger thing. And that to me, when that clicked, it just like was, oh, like it makes sense why we're doing what we're doing. It makes sense for us to need to explore it. It makes sense for us to need to understand more of it, because it is us. We are it. And that was the biggest thing for me. And I think I was more on the side of looking towards the outside. Like I felt this connection between Earth and space more than anything. It just felt so part of one another that it was so hard. It's so hard for me to separate the two now. It's just, I think that was the most overwhelming feeling that I felt from this whole experience.
And what does that mean for the future? Well, the Apollo missions and other space missions have already given us a very strong sense of the environmental awareness we need to have on this planet, on the mother world, as Rick says. What we have to guard against, though, is we're not abandoning the Earth. We're not leaving it behind, and we don't get a free pass to go be polluters. We don't have a free pass to go trash low Earth orbit or the moon and Mars or the asteroids. And that is another tricky part of this expansion. So we have to take the environmental awareness that we've so painstakingly created here on Earth, we have to take it out with us. I believe we will, because think about it, everyone who leaves the Earth to live elsewhere will experience the overview effect. They will see the Earth as a whole system, no borders, no boundaries. And the hope will be that they'll see the other planets in a new way and won't trash the other planets of the solar ecosystem. And don't forget, the Earth is a part of the solar ecosystem. One last thing I'll say, those of us who are working on bringing the overview effect down to Earth, like the Human Space Program and other organizations, we actually believe that for humanity to move civilization into a larger ecosystem, let me put it bluntly, it's going to be great for the Earth. That was a dream of our mentor, Gerard K. O'Neill, and we carry it forward today. I'm going to close with just saying something that NASA astronaut Katie Coleman said. I'm paraphrasing, but essentially, she had this insight that there's no difference here, except she did say, the Earth is our ship and the universe is our home. So if we could just have that shift in awareness, all will be well as we move off of the mother world and occupy a much larger ecosystem, and as we evolve into it. And that's the lesson of the overview effect. It's just the truth of who we are and where we are and where we're going. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Frank. That was really well said. And I love your forecasting as well of it's, it doesn't end here. It's not just about seeing Earth as part of the space system, but the solar system. And, we'll keep expanding that outwards. And it really made me think of, the evolution of consciousness of humans, right? When we're born and we're young, we have a very self-centered view, right? As we're figuring out how we interact with the world around us. And then as we mature and gain life experience, we start to include our family, our communities, and we expand outwards into greater groups of we. And that's what really allows us to shift things on a greater scale. So thank you very much for offering that perspective. Robert, I'm going to hand it over to you for our next speaker.
Great. Thank you so very much. Great words from my dear friend, Frank. Thank you so much for joining us, Frank. We just really can't thank you enough for all of your continued inspiration and wisdom, really every day here on our home of, right here in space on Earth, as you always remind us. So next, I'm very honored to, as Sarah said, our next guest we'll be talking about one of the very important principles that Rick mentioned in terms of being able to make sure that we don't pollute either our space here on Earth or space in outer space, and be able to make sure that we're sustainable and efficient in how we go about this. And my next guest really took this to heart. He's the CEO of an organization that he created with also our dear friend Greg Autry, and he takes it literally when he says turn your garbage into gold, and he takes aerospace grade carbon fiber scraps and turns them into incredible essentially works of art, but it's really a wonderful way of repurposing things he learned very well of getting his mechanical engineering degree at USC. And he's very, very passionate about innovation and using innovation to create sustainability and really taking to heart the responsibility that we all have to be able to take care of our precious Earth. So please welcome our next guest, Ryan Olliges.
Thanks for the intro, Robert. And thanks for having me, Rick and Sarah and Robert. It's great to be here. I'm here today to talk about elevated materials. We're an advanced materials company focused on taking carbon fiber waste from the aerospace industry and converting it back into usable products for other industries. And what really got me excited about this opportunity was a long time ago working in the University of Southern California Rocket Propulsion Lab. One of the local aerospace companies reached out to our student group and said that they were doing a freezer clear out, and there was a bunch of material that had expired that was going to be landfilled the next day if nobody was going to come and collect it. And as a student group, we went and picked it up, and we were blown away by how much material would be considered scrapped by these large companies. And it got me thinking that I needed to start a business to collect and convert this material into something usable. So I got started making carbon fiber skateboards as an undergrad in college, and ended up launching that on Kickstarter to demonstrate that you could take this material and convert it into something useful. So why is carbon fiber used in space applications and in aerospace? When you're talking about putting things into orbit or lifting them off the ground, structures have to be as light as possible. You want to do that to maximize the capacity that your rocket can carry. So you need the highest performing materials where strength to weight ratio is critical. Some other interesting things about carbon fiber in the space industry in particular is if you orient your fibers just right, you can create structures that have a zero coefficient of thermal expansion. That means when one side of your satellite is being heated by the sun and the other side is cold in the shade, There's no distortion in your structure, so you can get great, used in optics, so you can get great imagery. Just wanted to check, are the slides showing at the moment? That's all right.
We'll get them up. We'll get them right up.
So where is waste generated in the production of aerospace composite parts? The aerospace industry uses carbon fiber parts to make primary structures for things like payload fairings, aircraft hulls, wings, satellite buses. And during that process, a lot of waste is generated, up to 30% in some cases. That's material that may have defects. When you're laying fiber onto a large form to make carbon fiber starts off as a fabric with a resin infused into it. And that is then laid onto a large form. And in order to do that, you end up trimming your material so that it can be fit to that form, and you generate a bunch of waste in different areas. And sometimes entire production batches can be scrapped. And in those cases, the current issue, since it's difficult material to make use of, is that it just gets thrown away. And the reason that it gets thrown away is because it's difficult to take that material that has protective backing paper on it. It's difficult to take it and turn it into something useful. And what we've developed at Elevated Materials is a way to take that material that would otherwise go into the landfill and convert it into stock material that would otherwise, a stock material that can be used in many different industries. So we focus on three, we got started with skateboards, but now we focus on three primary products. We make sheets and plates, so large structural sheets that can be used for in similar way to the similar way that you use sheet metal. So you can cut drone frames and medical devices and solar array structures. We make billets. The billets can be machined into all sorts of different products. One company is using that product to make billets, or using that product to make putter heads. And we also make structural profiles, angle brackets, and other structural profiles that can be used in industrial bracket applications. So we have a growing distribution network where our primary product is this stock material. And the important thing about this as it relates to the space industry is that the stock material that was destined for space has a lot of value in other industries that may not be able to afford new material because of the extreme cost of this material. So what we're able to do is, and I've got some slides up now. On the left, you see our sheets. Our billets are in the middle, and our structural profiles are on the right-hand side. So what we're doing is taking this material that's exclusive, or not exclusive, but primarily used in aerospace and space applications, and bringing it to other industries at a cost that makes it usable. Next slide, please. So here we have some examples of customers that use our material. We've got LA Golf. They're using the billet material to make a putter head. it's very interesting given the lightweight properties of the composites. LA Golf is able to take the putter head and distribute the weight further to the edges. They use tungsten on the outside. The weight distribution with the lighter composite structure gives the putter head a higher moment of inertia, which helps the putt roll straighter. Carbon fiber is X-ray transparent, so some of our medical device customers are taking advantage of the material because it's lightweight, structural, and X-rays can see right through it. We're doing a lot of work with drone manufacturers, making the structural components for the airframes of drones. We have some customers building robotic structures out of our material. And one of our more interesting stories, and one that has me pretty excited, is we got a batch of material that was being used in the primary structure of one of the largest rockets ever built. They changed their material choice over and ended up scrapping out a decent amount of material. So that material was destined to go to space. It ended up being scrapped. And then once we collected it, we converted it into panels that were then machined into solar array structures, put back onto satellites, and launched into orbit. And now there's hundreds of those parts orbiting the Earth. Next slide, please. So the important thing that I want to leave you all with is the thought that while certain material may be waste from one industry, there's almost always another industry that can make use of it. The age-old saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure, applies in aerospace. And there's a lot of opportunities beyond carbon fiber to identify waste streams, collect that material, and turn it into something useful for somebody else.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so very much for sharing that, Ryan. That's exciting. A quick question. Why skateboards? Like, I guess it's obvious you're California in college, but was there a particular thing that inspired you to Back to the Future maybe, or something?
You know, skateboards is a fun one. I started making skateboards in high school, and I had always liked composites. And at USC, the whole campus is flat, so everybody skates around. And I just got the idea that it'd be cool to be skating around on a lighter weight board that had a cool look, and I wanted to use some fun material to make it.
Right. Did people realize that it was an aerospace skateboard?
They did. It's made from rocket scraps, and that was one of the taglines that we had when we were selling skateboards through the 121C brand.
They saw, here's that scrappy guy Ryan coming up on the skateboard. That's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I'm really excited. We'll look forward to talking to you more in the group discussion. But for right now, I am really honored to hand it back over to my amazing co-host, Sarah.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you, Ryan. I also love the skateboarding story. And it really just goes to show when we tap into our creativity and we think, imagine if, we can come up with some really neat, innovative solutions that can really transform the world. So we're going to move into our next speaker. Thank you again, Ryan. Morgan Goodwin is the Executive Director of the Planetary Sunshade Foundation, leading efforts to explore and advocate for solar geoengineering solutions to combat climate change. Bit of a tongue twister this morning here. With a background in environmental activism and public policy, Goodwin brings a visionary approach to balancing planetary protection with ethical and sustainable space technology and infrastructure development. Morgan, it's really great to have you here with us, and we really are excited to share with everyone who's watching more about what you're doing at Planetary Sunshade Foundation.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, EarthLight Foundation, for hosting this. I do think it is important on Earth Day to take the widest scope possible. And, it's a real honor to kind of share this space with Frank White. The overview effect is something that I've known about since I was a little kid, and working on kind of doing good things for the world, right? Because the world is fragile has kind of been an ethos that I've had since as long as I can remember. And in college, that really manifested into this focus on climate change and focus on changing climate as a existential threat, as the threat, as the challenge that would kind of define my life, so to speak. And so my name is Morgan, as Sarah said. Thank you. I'm the executive director of the Planetary Sunshade Foundation. I'm also currently and will be for a couple more months the director of the Sierra Club Angeles chapter, and I've spent my career working in the kind of the mainstream environmental movement, working on climate advocacy, going to global climate conferences, serving in local climate positions. As the mayor of Truckee, I helped pass our 100% clean energy mandate uh, and a bunch of other stuff. But I want to tell you about the planetary sunshade as a concept because the sort of traditional methods that we have been working on to address climate change, namely decarbonizing our globe, switching to 100% clean energy, eliminating emissions, we are unfortunately realizing that those are insufficient. And I have kind of been looking for, well, given that that set of solutions is necessary but insufficient, what else can we do? What else is there? I will just say as another part of a preference that I'm perhaps a little bit more nervous than usual today because any minute now, sometime today, we're expecting news out of the White House that we'll be doing some kind of executive action to curtail, attack, limit, punish organizations like the Sierra Club that work on climate change. And it's a really scary moment. They're talking about threatening tax exempt status and other kind of limits on our ability to help protect this earth. And so this is there's a lot of uncertainty today in that. But in general, we know this is a real all hands on deck moment. Because as we've been talking about, global warming is here. It's getting worse. In Los Angeles, we had historic fires this winter, 33 people killed, 200,000 people were evacuated in one moment. We know that temperatures will keep going up. We know that these disasters will keep increasing. And we know that the three pillars of the solution are the three R's: to reduce emissions, to remove greenhouse gases, and to reflect excess radiation. And so before we get to the space component of reflecting excess radiation, I want to just walk through those three R's in a little more detail. We call this the napkin diagram. I draw it on napkins all the time. The concept is that this red line here, this current trajectory, this business as usual, this is burn all the oil, burn all the coal. Let's keep charging ahead, and that is terrifying. Reducing emissions is necessary, but insufficient. And one of the reasons it's insufficient is that the CO2 in the atmosphere will remain in the atmosphere for centuries. And so reducing emissions is like stopping the leak, but there's still all that excess carbon in the atmosphere. And so naturally, we want to talk about removing those emissions, removing those greenhouse gases. We do that a variety of ways. It happens naturally. We can help plant trees, and we can also, create carbon removal machines. The scale is really important here. The scale that those solutions work on is going to take centuries. Even the industrial infrastructure needed is a huge amount of infrastructure needed. And critically, that infrastructure runs on electricity, and you don't want to run a coal plant to power your carbon dioxide removal machines. So we need to have a fully decarbonized, at least electric grid, and then excess clean energy before we can really start removing gigatons of carbon. So that means that for the next 5 to 10 decades, right? As long as we're all going to be alive, this green line here of reflecting sunlight is going to be more and more of a conversation. This conversation is picking up as we speak. And there's two main ways to do it. One is stratospheric aerosol injection, put reflective particles in the stratosphere. There's a lot of credibility to that idea. It's something that we think is very important to pursue and explore, and it could be done relatively quickly and cheaply. But the part that we work on is the other way to do it, which is to reflect some of the sunlight or block some of the sunlight in space. And so we call this concept the planetary sunshade. It is, in some ways, it's a simple concept. It's like if you're at the beach and the sun is too hot, you put up an umbrella, right? You cool off by blocking some of that sun. Now, the structures that would do that are necessarily solar sails. Solar sailing is a exciting and tested technology. There's a specific location, the Sun-Earth Lagrange 1 point, that allows a spacecraft to be continuously in line between the Earth and the Sun. And so solar sails, a sunshade placed at Lagrange 1, provides that continuous cooling. It also has the benefit of being relatively stable and relatively out of the way of other spacecraft in our busy, low Earth orbit. There's a large project. Offsetting 1 degree Celsius of global warming would require blocking approximately 0.5%, 0.5% of the sun's radiation. But at that distance, that's about 2 million square kilometers of sunshade. And so it's been studied for a long time. NASA scientist James Early testified to Congress in 1989 about this concept, saying it could happen, this is feasible. But really only in the last decade and really the last 5 or 6 years, as the reusability of rockets, the cost of launch has fallen dramatically, and also the impacts of the climate crisis have come home. Has this become an active topic of conversation, and the organization that I work for, the Planetary Sunshade Foundation, was started to kind of address that urgency. This is a daunting scale. This would be the largest infrastructure project that humanity has ever constructed. It's not impossible, but this is sort of a Three Gorges Dam level of a construction project. It's not a Manhattan project. We're not inventing new physics. We're not pushing the boundaries of that. But we are doing engineering at a scale that will push us. To do that requires political alignment, and the environmental impact of launches at this scale starts to become really significant. Both launch and actually surprisingly re-entry. A re-entering rocket through the atmosphere literally heats the upper layers of the atmosphere, which changes the chemistry of that, which has huge impacts on the ozone and the kind of other climate impacts. And so we at the Sunshade Foundation are really focused on the research needed to better understand what this is. Some of those areas of research include the climate impacts. So we actually work with some of the best climate modelers in the world, the climate modelers that help produce the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reports, rely on the climate models, and we work with them to understand this. We are very tied into the solar sailing development community. I'll be attending the International Solar Sailing Symposium in the Netherlands in July. Solar sailing at Sun-Earth Lagrange 1 is its own, doable but not yet done set of challenges. And then flying an entire constellation, right? Because 2 million square kilometers of sunshade would roughly split out into thousands or tens of thousands of large spacecraft, which need to not collide and kind of continue to operate. We're very keen on the use of space resources. As I mentioned, if we launched everything from Earth, the rocket equation is a brutal equation. But if we can get a lot of the mass from, say, the moon, we think it's more possible, but still tough. And the last one here, which is in some ways probably the most difficult, is governance and ethics, where we're necessarily talking about something that would impact everyone on Earth. We think it would be a positive impact, but it's not something to be taken lightly. And one of the mantras or credo of the Planetary Sunshade Foundation is that only government can authorize geoengineering, can authorize a climate intervention like this. And our work is to educate and explore and help empower government decision makers with the best information as climate impacts get worse, so that we can be aware. So that is a brief overview. I hope I didn't go too long on that, but thank you all for the chance to share.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Morgan. Not too long at all. We actually still have a few minutes. And I'd like to understand, this project developing this space-based sunshade to help cool the Earth is a perfect case of space for Earth, right? A lot of people tend to view the endeavors in space as a waste of resources and that, we have our own problems here. But this is a classic example of how we can actually to Frank's point, remember that we are part of a system and what we do in space is going to impact Earth, and we can use that to our advantage. What ethical guidelines influence a bold undertaking like this?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned the key one that only governments can authorize this project to be deployed. I think that's key. The transparency is really key. So we, sometimes the scientific community, right, can be and can be very focused on its academic paper format and talking to other scientists. Our organization is dedicated to educating the public and being a good communicator and being available. We also think that from a space development perspective, look, there is a way that the geopolitics and power politics of this Earth could manifest in space in a dangerous and scary way, right? Great powers competing for resources, competing for the high ground, of which the Lagrange points in general are by definition the high ground in the Earth-Moon system. And so we think that the ideal scenario is obviously the maximal kind of international cooperation. And we think that, and to the point, and I know that you all agree with this, but the construction of this project could be a way for not just the major kind of hegemonic spacefaring nations, but actually could be a way for any nation that wanted to engage in the space program to have an opportunity to do so. And the construction of this project could lift essentially all spacefaring nations and have a role in expanding that access. And we think that is actually key to kind of building the international coalition and getting not just the historic space powers, but getting the Kenyan Space Agency and getting the Korean Space Agency and getting the Indian Space Agency to see this as their mission, because we think it is a very important thing to be doing in space for everyone.
Amazing. Yes, and I agree. It's it's a beautiful way of how we can work together despite our differences, because space has traditionally been the playground where, despite what's going on the ground politically, we are still sharing science and we are advancing things forward, and definitely hope that will continue long into the future. So thank you very much, Morgan, for what you're doing to contribute to that community and to helping shift the paradigm of thought in the industry. And then we're going to move into some general Q&A. We've had several questions come through from our audience. So Robert, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you very much to Morgan. Very inspirational. We're really excited about what you're doing and really thankful for you taking the time to come to enlighten us and enlighten all of the audience participants that we have today. So let's open this up for a group discussion. This is really space for all, literally. And I'd like to just have everybody give some input and have ask questions to each other. We're going to, Sarah and I will have some questions for all of you. And we'll just get some insight dive a little bit deeper. We'll keep them all really quick. So we apologize to the audience if someone's just about to answer in depth, and then we move on to somebody else. But we really want to hear from everybody as much as we can. Like, let's start out going back to the EarthSpace agreement. Thank you again, Rick, for your leadership in putting that together and being sort of that shining star, North Star, to guide so much of discussions. And we haven't been the best stewards of Earth so far, as we all know, and we want to really make sure we don't make some of these same mistakes again as we expand beyond our spaceship Earth into the other parts of space. What are some suggestions that you all have in terms of how we can make sure that we are more careful and not make some of those same mistakes again? Maybe we'll start out with Frank, who always reminds us that we are already in space.
Well, let me go back to what I said before, which is that we have a great opportunity to expand out into the solar ecosystem with a greater environmental awareness, because by definition, whoever does that will experience the overview effect. They will see the Earth as a whole system and one without borders or boundaries. However, in and of itself, it won't be enough to bring the environmental awareness that we need to the new people who are going to live off-world. That, I think, comes down to us, those of us who care about the future of humanity, and we know that the future of humanity in space is the future of humanity, which is a point that we're making over and over again. So I believe that we have to be tireless in spreading the word and sharing the insights that we're sharing here today. One aspect of that we have not mentioned, and I'll just leave it at that, there's real pioneering work going on in virtual reality to reproduce the type of experience astronauts have. I think we should all be supporting those efforts, because environmentally, we're going to be limited in how many people we can give the pure overview effect experience to. And virtual reality is a domain that gives us a lot of flexibility at a relatively low cost to ensure that everyone can experience some version of the overview effect, which is really the cornerstone of this new environmental awareness we want to embody and imbue in everyone who lives off-world.
I agree. Those are great points. The virtual reality, maybe it's not so virtual, it's an alternative reality potentially, but and there's a lot of work that's being done to that your organization and your group is leading the charge in being able to connect some of these worlds together that we have here on Earth, connecting worlds of space and simulation and semiconductors and sensors, bringing all these worlds together so that we all can work together collaboratively on being able to heighten all of humanity. So thank you very much, Frank. Anybody else would like to address that? Ryan, what do you think? How can we avoid some of the mistakes? I think you're proof that those can be avoided, some of your practices.
Yeah, I think one of the great things about space travel is that sustainability is built into it at its core, because you've got to take just about everything that you need, all the organic resources that you need, they've got to be brought with you. So yeah, you have to be able to reuse everything that you bring. All single-use items are not an option. So that technology will have to be created to recycle organic waste, recycle any materials that are brought, whether that's metal or plastic being broken down and then 3D printed into new objects, food, recycling, and growing crops, all of that needs to be fully sustainable.
Yep.
And
And
it's
again,
built into space at its core.
yeah, we're already seeing, I think, great points. Some of these practices that we're creating for space travel or actually using in space and then coming back down to Earth and helping with our sustainability back down here on Spaceship Earth as well. Morgan?
Yeah, I'm tempted to sort of flip the question around and challenge the premise. I'm not sure that we will be able to settle space and do kind of much more ambitious space exploration unless we have actually figured out how to rein in climate change and address some of the other very pervasive issues here on Earth. And the reason for that is pretty stark. Access to space requires a highly developed and interconnected industrial and political system. And that system depends on a stable climate. And so for folks who are excited about the prospect of humanity expanding into space, over the next 50 to 100 years, I would certainly challenge those folks to think about what the climate is like here on Earth that is needed to continue to support a growing space industry. I think that a climate racked by increasing hurricanes, droughts, fires, etc., is one that's actually going to be really difficult to sustain any kind of space activity, let alone kind of a exploration and really the hopeful and exciting stuff that I believe in and want to see happen.
So thanks for that as you say, stark insight. We'll wrap up this question with Rick, the final word on this question. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I guess I'm going to cause trouble for both of our other
as usual,
right? Regarding Frank and the VR stuff, I love the idea of VR. But however, one of the challenges, and it's a line we have to walk, is the experience of the overview effect via virtual, or as you call them, alternative realities, becomes part of a new culture of escapism from life itself. And, my stand is that I want to see humanity and life expanding beyond the Earth in reality, in whatever form we go. Maybe we're going in the form we have. Maybe we load ourselves into some other form. I am concerned about a certain part of our society climbing into virtual worlds and becoming sheeples, and moving into these places where they are ever more removed from even contact with the Earth and the organic systems within which they live here on the surface. So it is a fine line. I think I agree with Frank 100%. The idea of experiencing the overview effect is as virtually real as we can go. And I've had some experiences recently in the last few months with some of the traveling shows that enable that. That's important. Regarding Morgan's point, I don't think it's or when. I think we do have to do both. The very infrastructure that is necessary to carry out planetary sunshade requires a robust development of off-world infrastructure. So we do have to be both, and I think we have to be cautious when we carry that message out into the public, because people will latch on to the part like that we have to wait, and we have to be able to walk and fly spaceships or rocket ships at the same time. I think that we do have that capability, and this is one reason we're holding this event, is to weave those two concepts together rather than allow some folks out there to separate them. That we can't go up until we've grown up, rather than the fact that we grow up as we go up. And that's the aspect that I want to see all of this happen. I have no disagreement at all with Ryan. So, right. The whole philosophy underlying Earthlight is, there are a lot of R's there: recycle, reuse, repurpose, replace, all of that. What I find fascinating about the movement that all of the folks on this call are a part of now is that it's so emblematic as we move from spaceships or rockets that are thrown away routinely to recycling, reuse, repurposing. That's a model that we can give for the Earth. And I think that's one of the things we're missing in terms of our messaging and what it is that we're going to be able to do out there. And I'll end with this, that, I've very often used the line that there is no person more aware of the fragility of life on Earth than somebody floating above the Earth in a sealed tin can, eating food that's grown recycled from their own human waste and rebreathing their own air that has been cleaned, in that same bubble. It's just a smaller bubble of the macro bubble that we call the mother world.
Wow. Thank you so very much. Sarah, I think you have a question for the group as well.
Yes, absolutely. So we have someone who's written in about how we can improve equitable access to outer space for those people who don't have the means to go, i.e., or e.g., excuse me, those that don't have a lot of money, because this is the current narrative after recent space flights, that this is, a game for the rich and the wealthy. But as we spoke about earlier, the cost of sending payload is going down significantly since it was the origination point. So what are some of the things that we can do to ensure that this doesn't become an exclusive club, if you will? I'll leave it open to the floor. And of course, Rick, if you'd like to chime in, we'd love to hear your thoughts also.
I think that it's a little bit like the answer that I gave the first time. We have to keep pressing for space for all. Not everybody agrees with that. We have to understand that the battle is not won. It's still to be engaged in. The other aspect that we have to work on is the idea that going off the planet is a billionaire's game, and it will always be a billionaire's game. I would just cite Sir Richard Branson as one billionaire. When I interviewed him for the overview effect, I said, what is the long-term plan? And he said, well, yes, initially for Virgin Galactic, most of the people who are able to fly will be wealthy. But our plan is to mimic the airline industry, which started out with wealthy people going first, and then over time reinvesting in the industry. And eventually we have an airline industry that it's not available to everybody, but by far many more people are able to fly than I think the early pioneers could have ever imagined. So the idea of the way things are today, for whatever reason, it's going to be that way forever. We have to point out that that's not a business to do it that way, to make it a special club. It really isn't. The business will be to democratize access to the outer space environment, or, the solar ecosystem. So we have to correct misunderstandings. And I am still amazed after 40 years of the misunderstandings people have of the entire space movement. It is monumental. It is amazing. And sometimes I feel like the more we point out that the assumptions people hold are incorrect, the more tightly those assumptions are clinged to. But I think we have to point out that there's nothing permanent about the way spaceflight is done today. And in fact, it's unlikely to remain that way. And then we also have to keep pressing the carriers to follow a direction that will make the environment of outer space open to all.
you, Frank. It's a great answer. Anyone else want to contribute to the question?
Yeah, I can chime in.
Great.
I'd say it's a timing. I agree with Frank entirely. It's a timing thing. And if you look at the cost of space flight, even in the last 20 years, NASA was paying for $75 million a head for Soyuz flights, and we've seen that number go down quite drastically. And I think it will continue to do so. And the way it is right now, there are not a lot of jobs in space, and we're still seeing tens of jobs on the ISS. But in the near future, in the next 20 or 30 years, there will be job opportunities. You could think about it exactly like the airline industry. There are flight attendants and pilots, maintenance workers. All of those jobs will need to be filled in the growing space economy. And as space travel becomes more mainstream, the cost will continue to decrease and access will be opened up to everybody.
I agree with you. A lot of people forget about all of the supporting roles that are required in order for these bold and visionary things to take place. And, every industry is going to need those support roles. We need human resources and accounting, marketing. We need people to communicate like what we're doing here today to really take this knowledge that sometimes seems like it's up here and help put that into terms that everyone can understand. So thank you for that perspective. I see Manny here as well, who's with us live, has commented that maybe a solution could be to offer a percentage of available space flights to lottery winners, saying that he would personally buy a lottery ticket for $1,000 to have a 1 in 200 or 2,000 or maybe even $200,000 or 200,000 chance of going to space. I mean, I know I certainly would buy one as well. So we'll put that out into the ether and see what comes back. Thank you, Manny, for that. Before we move to the next question, any other comments, concerns?
Morgan had a reply, and then I would like to say something.
Okay, perfect. Let's hear it, Morgan.
Yeah, I wanted to build on that. I'm far from an expert in what the sort of tourism economy will look like or what the scale of growth might look like. But I tend to agree with Ryan that once there are other industries that are providing value to Earth, those industries will create jobs. Analogy I often come back to is the building of the Transcontinental Railroad, right? Where the thousands of people who were actually involved in building it were often some of the first people from their communities. They have the opportunity to travel, out west, across the country, settle there, et cetera. But I think we have to look at what is the industry in space that is going to provide value at scale to Earth. And I think providing kind of climate cooling is a candidate for what industry might actually kind of catalyze that level of industrialization and create that kind of activity.
When we started fighting for this back in the 80s and what led to the contracts for the private companies to go to the space station, the goal was to begin to create an environment where we would move out of the government. You want to talk about elite, before you used to have to be in the government. So at least we've taken a step now towards regular people being able to go. One thing too, that we need to remind people, it was interesting tied to Manny's comment. Hey, Manny, how you doing? Is that we forget, I think the last 2 orbital flights, I may get this wrong, were populated, other than the person who actually bought them or paid for them, by people who couldn't have ever afforded to go on their own, if I want to get that right. Also, this one that strangely some people are making fun of that just occurred, I think two of the women that were on the flight were people who would have never been able to go on their own, and they were funded by groups like Space for Humanity and such. And we need to push back on this new stereotyping. And of course, one has to wonder how much of all of this is tied to the current political environment, the oligarchy, billionaire type thing. I wrote about this on space.com in an essay called The Elysium Effect about 4 years ago. That when people started flying, people are going to come for them because they're easy targets, manifestations of sort of a disparate wealth economy problem that we have. And so we're dealing with both of those at the same time. But as going back to Frank, people who flew in the air used to be called jet setters. And I mean, Frank Sinatra's song, and I wasn't an adult back then, I'm going to be clear, but Come Fly With Me, Come Fly Away. That was the anthem of jet setters because that was so super cool to be able to climb on a plane and fly that he did a song about it at the time. And now, we all go. Same thing with all the technology we're using to have this broadcast, to have this conversation. These were items that only the wealthy could afford. We now need to get and make sure that we have market forces that are pushing those costs down, because the goal is for anyone who has the dream to be able to go.
Thank you, Rick. That's really great. It's important that we acknowledge the fact that there are opportunities already occurring for those that are not the billionaire oligarchs, as you mentioned. And, as we continue to expand and get more of the general public interested in space, this is also going to continue to encourage the different spaceflight providers to expand that even greater. So, we have to keep having the conversation, chipping away, and through time and through a community of voices, all sharing a combined message, that's how we're going to be able to move the needle. So thank you for that perspective. I'm going to pass it back over to Robert for the next question.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you again, Rick, for the guidance. Thank you to everybody for your amazing insights on that question. And we'll go on to another question that we have from the audience regarding one of the three pillars of Rick's amazing EarthSpace agreement, which hopefully everybody here that's a member of a nonprofit NGO organization and anywhere in the world will join us in signing that pledge. And on that pledge, we pledge to explore and experience this amazing universe that we have, but do so in a way that respects the universe and everything that we find. This is especially important for Rick. And instead of having to kick off that, I'll let him have the final word. But what do you guys think when we hear about that great question and someone really pointed out that word that Rick was so poignant in including in there, respect. So Ryan and Morgan, what does that mean to you? What do you think, and what insights might you have on that? I know Frank always has something to say on this. So Frank, maybe you'll lead it off. Or Morgan, you back?
Go for it, okay. Frank.
When we talk about respect for the Earth and for the universe as a whole, I always come back to the wisdom of indigenous people. And one of the aspects of the space community that I'm extremely happy to be involved with is that we are turning to elders and to indigenous wisdom and attempting to understand what they seem to understand intuitively. I think it's great that Rick has coined this term, or I think you have, Rick, MotherWorld, Mother Earth. That's one reason indigenous people have such a respect for our planet. It's their mother. They see Earth as the mother. As I've interviewed astronauts about the overview effect, increasingly I hear them say, well, the Earth is alive. It's a living being. And I didn't hear astronauts say that in the early days, but there seems to be an increasing recognition of that reality and of that that nature of the planet. And in my other book that hasn't gotten as much attention, I'm afraid, as the overview effect, the Cosmo Hypothesis, I do talk about the idea that we need to give as much to the universe as we take, and that we need to look at that region beyond the Earth we call space. We need to look at it not as an area that we can just take from, but that we can give something. And it sounds really preposterous, but there was a long period of time when Western civilization, at least, looked at the Earth as something we can just take from. And now, thanks to indigenous wisdom, the overview effect, and changes in awareness, we see, no, we can't just take from the Earth forever. We have to give back to it. And if it's a living being, we are compelled to respect her. But I want to see that insight extended, to the solar ecosystem and beyond.
We agree. Thank you very much, Frank. Morgan, I know it's impossible to ever quite follow Frank, but we're eager for your insight as well, please.
No, thank you. I I really appreciate Frank's point, and I think that it dovetails really well with the I think a lot about the concept of the Anthropocene, right? The notion that the geologic epoch that the Earth is currently in is primarily defined by human activity as opposed to the geologic processes that have dominated the last 4 billion years. And the respect point is so important. To me, it manifests as a humility, a respect for the complexity of the interconnectedness of the biosphere, of how much we don't know. And so I try and approach our work with an extreme amount of curiosity and humility, right? When we're convinced that we have the answers, that's when we're probably most likely to mess things up. And yet, the challenge of the Anthropocene and the challenge of climate is so difficult because as long as we do have an industrial civilization that is supporting 8 billion plus people and relies on these interconnected agricultural, mining, and transport systems, we are having a profound impact. And I believe that our task is to manage that, is to understand that impact and radically reduce it. But there's sort of a responsibility for the overall system that we are taking on. And so I'm agreeing with Frank that there is a moral imperative to give back and to care for. But I'm sort of offering that in actuality, that caring for is a really sophisticated management that we need to get really smart at doing. We need to get really good at caring for this earth in order to safeguard it and the people on it.
Agreed. Thank you so much. Rick, would you like to get final words on your idea?
Yeah, I not to go way off into things. I indigenous, whatever. I think I call them the first peoples, the first peoples who are this place or that place or the other. The only indigenous people to me on the planet are somewhere in Africa. They're the ones who didn't go anywhere. They started there. And the reason I say that is because I want us to all be reminded that at some point in our history, each one of us, the early members of what societies we came from, were in fact, those first people, whether it was the Druidic societies of Great Britain or Northern Europe before the Roman Empire rolled in or whatever. It's a heritage we all have, that we at one point were connected to the earth. And what has happened is some societies have become more and more removed from that connection. And I think that the work, especially Frank's work with the overview effect, which, by the way, he manifests in his life, the gentility, the awareness, the openness of being able to go out and look back at the mother world from space, is that connection that we need to have more of. and get away, put this thing down that we're staring at, that's in our hand all the time, and look around. I have gardens. Put your hands in the dirt, right? Plant something. Go hug a tree. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but I mean, it isn't ridiculous. It's beautiful. And to me, a true spacer, capital S spacer of this next gen, is someone who is more in touch with the Earth than even the space generations that brought us to this point. We don't go out in separation from the mother world. We go out because of our duty to and our connection to the mother world.
Very well said. Thank you very, very much, Rick. And that's what we are doing by this webinar that we have blessed to be able to have and present to everybody, is help create that connection. We still have time for one more question, so I am so excited to hand it over to the amazing Sarah. I'll pivot over to the pivoter, Sarah, so she can give the last question to our amazing guest.
Thanks, Robert. I love that everyone is adopting the language. Language is really important. It's what creates our reality, and it's why we're having this conversation here, so that we can have a common language about what we want to build in the future. And to that point, Frank White is working on some things with the Human Space Program, and there's a simulation model that they've been creating. Frank, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'd really like to, and it builds a bit on what everybody has said, but most recently what Morgan was talking about, which is that we have created an incredibly complex, interconnected system here. I call it an overview system, where the Earth is not just the geological Earth anymore. It's also got all these overlays, including a techno system and a human system, and it's all very complicated. And everything that we do is a trade-off, really. And what we're working on at the Human Space Program, which I think could be a unifying force for all the different space people and environmentalists, policymakers, is a simulation model, where what we hope is that as we look at civilization moving into this larger ecosystem, we could make assumptions that would show up in the data as what is the impact of that particular change. For example, one element of the system that we have in place now is it does show, as humans begin to live off of the Earth in other space communities, what is the impact on CO2 in the environment. As the model gets more sophisticated, I think we could simulate the cost and impact of planetary sunshade, as opposed to other approaches. I could go on, and then we would go over time. But one of the great benefits of modeling is you could take a person with one point of view, let's say strongly pro space exploration, and a person with a very strong environmental point of view, bring them together to help build the model, not to argue. I've seen this happen before in other modeling situations, and it doesn't give you a final answer, but it helps you think about the trade-offs of different approaches to climate change, space exploration, and all of the different choices humanity has in front of us today. It's kind of an overview, but it's in a simulation model.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Frank. It's really important that we look at all the different avenues that can help us shift our perspective. Now we're going to wrap this up. We've had a really wonderful show, and for our closing remarks, we're going to pass it back to Rick Tumlinson.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank Sarah and Robert for the work they've done. And again, I want to thank Leah and Junaid, who are in the background, not sharing in the glory, but doing all the work, and for what they've done, pulling this thing together. I do want to, slightly off script here, if there is a script, whatever. I do want to point out that it came to my attention earlier that we have Bruce McCandless in our audience, who is one of my heroes. If you have ever seen that shot of the astronaut floating by themselves above the Earth in the MMU, man maneuvering unit, that's Bruce. And oh my God, if I ever had something that I would love to do, I would love to trade places or to get a chance to do that. You know, just yourself floating above the mother world. Amazing, amazing. And thank you, Bruce, for honoring us with your presence. And I hope to see you at New World. So I do want to mention that we have the New Worlds Conference, October 24th and 25th. Today is actually the official day that we're going live. Newworlds.org is the website. We're going to be giving away, I think, some ebooks and copies of my new book, self-promotional. I hate to do that, but Why Space? The Purpose of People. And people, the first 100 people who sign up will be getting a copy of that book. There it is on screen. We just really want to have you there. I think everybody on screen here, whether they know it or not yet, will be at New Worlds. And it is a Renaissance event. And we're going to be talking more in depth. You'll get to hang out and talk to these amazing people live. We're going to be at the IMAX Theater of Space Center Houston. Also, we'll be auctioning off this incredible recycled spacecraft, which actually looks like a skateboard that was sent to us by Ryan and his amazing company. Although some people have said we should have a betting game with me riding it to see how quickly I fall off. I'm going to dodge that by saying we will auction that at the event.
I think that'd be a good stage entrance.
Pardon?
That would be a good stage entrance.
Yeah, and I could demonstrate how gravity still works in even on stage. Again, I want to thank everybody. This is the beginning. There was more to be said, there's more to be had. I want to reflect, I think, what both Frank and Morgan and I'm sure Ryan believe is that we have a lot. We are in a battle for hearts and minds, but it is a battle that involves conversation and conversion rather than confrontation. And so engage your friends, talk to them, get your facts in order, make sure you have your facts lined up, and have the right kinds of conversations. It is not or, it's and. We can grow up and grow up at the same time. And I want to wrap this up, my words, with the credo of the EarthLight Foundation, which is to carry the seeds of life to places now dead, and the light of love to places now dark, and the eyes, hands, and imagination of humanity to places unseen, untouched, and unexplored. With that, I want to say thank you to everybody, and I want to hand it back to our hosts to wrap us up.
Thank you so much, Rick. That's a beautiful credo. I always get goosebumps whenever you share that. So, today's discussion really reminds us that this journey to space is not a clean escape from Earth. Just like Rick was mentioning, we need to utilize the tools at our disposal as resources to support us, not to escape. So this is really a reflection of how we treat our home, our future, and each other. We need to become stewards of our home and to work together in community and learn from each other rather than trying to, win or dominate. And the EarthSpace Agreement challenges us to really rise up to the occasion. It's asking us to take a stand for the things that we believe in and to not back down because it's inconvenient or uncomfortable in the moment. Because if we do that, then there won't be many more moments for us to experience all the other wonderful things that life has to offer. So it's asking us to innovate boldly, but never blindly, to really have our eyes open as we step forward into the future, and to treat every orbit, every planet, and every resource as something worth honoring, not just something that we are using. I'd like to say another thank you to all of our panelists, my co-hosts, and our support team in the background. Thank you to everyone who has joined us live today. We really appreciate your engagement and your support for this conversation. And we'd like to ask for your support to continue to spread the word and share the link for this video to those that maybe aren't even in space. So let us all do our good deed to bring in more to the community and explore better ways that we can go beyond. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, everybody, for making this all happen. Thank you, Sarah, for your amazing facilitation. We look forward to seeing everybody at New World.
Yeah.
Take care.
See you there.
I think that concludes today's program. Thank you, everyone, and have a great Earth Day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.